the secret Chevy 302's 28 trick that Ford never saw coming. Almost everything people think they know about Chevrolet's factory-built 302 for the Camaro Z28 is either incomplete, misunderstood, or buried under decades of racing mythology. By the time Chevrolet officially dropped the 302 into the Z28 for Trans-Am competition, hot rodders had already been building 301 combinations in home garages for years using bored 283 blocks and short-stroke crankshafts. Chevy did not invent the formula from scratch. They refined it, standardized it, and quietly turned it into one of the most successful small block combinations of the muscle car era. Then came the famous 290 horsepower rating. Anyone who has ever spent time around one of these engines knows that number never told the full story. A short 3-inch stroke, a wide 4-inch bore high-flow heads, solid lifter camshaft, and 11-to-1 compression do not behave like a mild street engine. Down low, the 302 could feel rough, peaky, and almost disappointing. But once the Tatch climbed past 4,000 RPM, the entire personality of the engine changed. The sound sharpened, the engine came alive, and suddenly, the little Z28 started behaving more like a road race car than a street Camaro. Today, let us skip the brochures and look at what the Chevy 302 really was. Subscribe to lock into this investigation, because today we reopen the case file to understand why the 302 was built the way it was. You have to look at the corner Chevrolet was backed into in 1966. Over in Dearborn, Ford already had their 289 high-performance Mustang dialed in. They were running comfortably in the newly formed SCCA Trans-Am series. Chevrolet wanted to compete, but Vince Piggins, their product performance manager, had two massive problems standing in his way. First, the SCCA rulebook was incredibly strict. Trans-Am regulations put a hard ceiling on engine displacement at exactly 305 cubic inches. Second, General Motors had passed a strict ban on factory-backed racing back in 1963. You could not just walk into the R&D department and ask for a massive budget to cast a brand new racing block. The corporate accountants would have shut the project down immediately. So, Piggins looked at the inventory on the shelf and realized Chevrolet had a huge gap. If they took the 283 V8 to the track, it simply did not have the lungs to match Ford's 289 at high RPMs. On the other hand, Chevy had the 327 V8, which made plenty of power, but the SCCA would instantly disqualify it for breaking the limit. Piggins needed an engine that hovered right under the 305 cubic inch mark. More importantly, he had to build it without tipping off the GM brass. Since he could not design a new engine from a clean sheet of paper, he had to start raiding his own parts bins to find a combination that worked. Since casting a brand new block would attract too much attention from GM's accountants, Piggins took the hot rodders approach. He went straight to the factory parts bin. The math was straightforward. He took the proven 327 small block, giving him a nice wide 4.00-inch cylinder bore. Then, he grabbed a forged steel crankshaft out of an early 283, which had a notably short 3.00-inch stroke, dropped that short crank into that wide bore, and the displacement works out to exactly 301.6 cubic inches. It was a perfectly legal 302 using existing casting numbers like the 3892657 blocks. Nothing for the bean counters to flag, but the real magic of the 302 was not just hitting the displacement limit. It was the internal geometry. By pairing a standard 5.7-inch connecting rod with that short 3-inch stroke, the engine ended up with an incredible 1.9-to-1 rod-to-stroke ratio. Any old-school engine builder will tell you why that ratio matters. That massive oversquare setup drastically reduced the rod angle. Less rod angle means the piston skirts are not scraping as violently against the cylinder walls. More importantly, it smoothed out the secondary harmonic vibrations that usually tear rotating assemblies apart. The bottom end was harmonically stable. If you pushed a typical big cube pushrod V8 of that era past 6,000 RPM, you were asking for bent pushrods or a scattered block. But this part's bin 302 It was perfectly comfortable screaming past 7,000 revolutions per minute run after run. It had a bottom end built like a tank. And it needed to be because that overbuilt hardware was the only way to survive the massive lie that Chevrolet was about to officially put on paper. With that bulletproof bottom end bolted together, Chevrolet was ready to put the 302 on paper. And this is where the famous 290 horsepower rating comes in. If you look at the factory's spec sheet, Chevy claimed it peaked at exactly 290 horses at 5,800 RPM. Any old school engine builder who has ever tuned a high compression V8 will tell you that number is a flat-out mechanical joke. To understand why, you just have to look at how they ran the dyno test. Chevy essentially measured the engine's output right before it actually woke up. The 302 was running a serious 11.0 to 1 compression ratio, and the legendary Duntov 3030 solid lifter camshaft named for its 30,000ths valve lash clearance. That cam had so much aggressive valve overlap that it barely generated any vacuum at low RP mis. If you ever owned one of these, you know the exact sound. It did not idle like a smooth sports car. It clattered and gasped, sounding like a sick tractor with a metallic rattle. It was gutless on the street, and you could not even run an automatic transmission with it because it had absolutely no low-end torque. The engine simply could not achieve true volumetric efficiency until the tachometer finally crossed the 5,000 RPM mark. By conveniently stopping the official dyno test at 5,800 RPM, Chevy was basically timing a drag racer in the first 60 feet and officially recording that as their top speed. This quiet little dyno trick solved two major headaches. First, it kept the insurance companies happy. In the late 60s, actuaries were slapping massive premiums on high horsepower cars, pricing young guys right out of the market. A conservative 290 horsepower rating kept the Z28 looking like a sensible, manageable street car on paper. Second, it made the competition relax. When Ford's racing engineers looked at Chevy's official numbers, they figured they were dealing with a restricted, compromised street motor. But out in the real world, the dyno does not lie. When independent mechanics started putting factory stock 302s on the rollers and letting them scream past that artificial 5,800 RPM ceiling, the truth came out. Up around 6,400 RPM and beyond, the 302 cleared its throat and easily laid down between 350 and 375 real horsepower. Ford went into the Trans-Am season expecting a mild 290 horsepower street car, and instead they ran headfirst into a 375 horsepower track reality. Once the 302 hit the track, Roger Penske and driver Mark Donohue took over. They did not just out-drive the competition to win the 1968 and 1969 Trans-Am titles, they out-thought them in the garage. Ford knew they were in trouble and rushed the tunnel port 302 into their race cars. On a flow bench, running push rods straight through massive intake ports probably seemed brilliant, but out on the asphalt, it killed all the low-end velocity. To find any usable torque, Ford drivers had to rev the absolute guts out of those engines. Push them hard enough, and the reciprocating stress would eventually cause the blocks to scatter their bottom ends all over the track. So, Ford tried again with the Boss 302, eventually strapping on a radical Autolite, inline carburetor, and cross-boss intake. It was a serious piece of airflow engineering. But Chevy teams did not beat it on the asphalt, they beat it in the inspection tent. Using classic paddock politics, they complained to the SCCA until the officials outright banned Ford's intake setup. While complaining about Ford's parts, Penske was busy stretching the rule book himself. He understood the basic physics of the Chevy 302, it lacked low-end torque. The best way to help a peaky high-revving motor get moving is to take away weight. So, in total secrecy, Penske stripped the Camaro bodies and dipped them in vats of acid. The chemicals ate away the thickness of the sheet metal, quietly shaving hundreds of pounds off the cars. To an SCCA inspector, it looked like a standard street shell. But with all that mass removed, that high-strung 302 could spool up instantly and scream down the straightaways. By 1970, the Trans-Am war had changed. Chevrolet already had the trophies, and the 302 had done exactly what it was designed to do. It proved that a small displacement Chevy could survive at brutal RPM levels and compete directly against Ford on the road course. But engines like the 302 came with compromises. They were expensive to warranty rough on the street and demanded drivers who understood how to keep them alive above 7,000 RPM. So Chevrolet moved on to the more practical 350, and the high-strung little 302 quietly disappeared from the lineup. Today, the Z28 302 survives as one of the most unique factory small block combinations Chevrolet ever produced, not because it was perfect, but because it behaved unlike almost anything else Detroit was building at the time. If you grew up around these screaming little 302s, let us know your story in the comments. And if you want more forgotten factory racing history like this, subscribe and stay tuned for the next investigation.